Well, thank you very much for joining me this evening, or this afternoon rather. Obviously, we're here to discuss your sort of re-election campaign for London, Mayor of London. One of the first things I want to kind of bring up with you is we know the pandemic has hit employment hard, with up to 3,000 Londoners losing their job. However, data does show that Black people especially are more likely to have lost their jobs in the pandemic. With your campaign promising £5 million to bring jobs back, how can you guarantee that more Black people will benefit from this and return to the workforce?
Well, what the pandemic has done is both expose and exacerbate the structural inequalities and racial inequalities that exist in our society. So in London alone, more than 18,000 Londoners have lost their lives. In the first wave, we saw that if you're a Black Londoner, you're 4 times more likely to die than a white Londoner. In the second wave, 3 times more likely if you're of Pakistani or Bengali origin. So we know it's exposing inequalities that exist in our society for a variety of reasons, because we know Black Londoners live in households that are multi-generational. They could have comorbidity, other health issues. They could be working in 0 hours contract jobs where they don't work, they don't get paid, so taking a risk with their life. They could have other health issues that make them more prone to having more severe consequences because of the virus and so forth. But you're spot on. We've also seen more than 300,000 Londoners losing their jobs so far, and more than 1 million Londoners furloughed, and that furlough scheme ends in September. Large numbers of those who've been furloughed and lost their jobs are young and Black, as well as Asian minority ethnic. And if we're not careful, my fear is we'll see a repeat of what we saw in the 1980s, which is mass unemployment and a generation written off, predominantly ethnic minority Londoners. And that's why what I've got, Leah, is a plan for jobs in the second term, but also plans to address the inequalities that exist. So should I be re-elected, we're going to make sure that we use all the levers we've got to invest in jobs. We've already got support from other people in the private sector, the utility companies, of a package of £544 million to support jobs. This includes jobs in future-proof sectors like green jobs, creative industries, digital, health and social care. We're going to build on the progress made with the Mayor's Construction Academy to support young Londoners. Do 3 things: protect the jobs we've got, keep them in work, support the creation of new jobs, but also for those that lose their jobs, get them back into work as soon as they've lost their jobs. We've got a big budget in adult education that I'm in charge of, £300 million. That's going to be used to help Londoners. We've ring-fenced £32 million of that into a good work fund to help young people, particularly in Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities, find work. And we're particularly targeting Black male Londoners who we know are prone to be unemployed for factors outside their control. I've got an initiative called the Workforce Integration Network, which has been working with digital and construction to help Black men in London, and we're going to roll that out into other sectors as well, because what we need to be doing is giving young Black Londoners opportunities to fulfill their potential rather than them becoming entrenched in long-term unemployment. It's really important we give people aspiration, but back that up with action. And should I be re-elected, that's what my New Deal is going to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. You've also proposed to establish a London Drugs Commission. However, we already know that Black people remain over-policed for drug-related crimes, and we've seen before reports and recommendations that do sometimes fail to be implemented on the large scale. How is this commission going to actually tackle the problem?
Well, I'm quite concerned about the impact of drugs on violent crime, on the impact on people's health, but also the impact it has on criminalising young Londoners, particularly around the issue of cannabis. So what I want to do is set up an independent drugs commission, a London Drugs Commission, made up of a number of people, those who work in the criminal justice system, those who work in public health, those who work in politics, community relations, academia, to do a piece of work looking at what happens in other parts of the world where they've decriminalised cannabis, to see what lessons we can learn in London, but also our government. So if there are things we can do that's in my power to do, that the Commission advises, we will do that. If there's things that we need the government to change its policies, we'll use the Commission's report as the basis to lobby the government. It's really important to have an open mind about these issues. I meet too many young Londoners who have committed no other criminal act, but they've got a criminal record because they've had a small amount of cannabis in their possession. Similarly, I see the health impact of drugs as well. I'm not talking about all drugs. I'm talking about looking at this London Drugs Commission looking at the arguments for and against and recommendations going forward about the issue of, in particular, cannabis, because we've got to recognise, the status quo isn't working.
Yes. Final question. I wanted to touch upon your police action plan, which proposes to focus on the disproportionality of police powers. What does this actually mean for Black Londoners?
I've got to accept that when it comes to trust and confidence of Black Londoners in the police, it isn't what it should be. And the reason why it's important is we're seeing too many Black Londoners who are the victims of crime not coming forward because they haven't got trust and confidence in the police. Witnesses to crime who are Black may not come forward and help with the prosecution. Similarly, Black Londoners may not want to join the police service because of their lack of trust and confidence. We've got to improve that. And so last summer, after George Floyd's awful killing, we did a lot of work. I support the Black Lives Matter movement in relation to highlighting the racism, discrimination and inequality Black people suffer, not just in Minnesota, Minneapolis and America, but across the world, including in London. What the action plan is about is taking on board the concerns raised by Black communities and experts and us listening. And the police were with us when we did the listening exercises, and that came up with a number of recommendations to improve trust and confidence, from increasing the number of Black people joining the police service, making sure they get promoted in the police service is really important as well, from looking at the whole issue of stop and search and how it's monitored, changing the monitoring groups. And so we've got two senior former Black Asian minority ethnic officers leading the work around monitoring of police powers, looking into the use of force, looking at the use of taser, looking at the use of handcuffs. All these are issues that cause the Black community concerns. We can't have our head in the sand and ignore them. We've got to take on board the concerns Black Londoners have, and this affects everyone, because if a Black Londoner doesn't come forward when they've been the victim of crime, that person may go on and commit further crimes. And so all Londoners need to understand this is in all of our interests to address the issue of the lack of trust and confidence that too many Black Londoners have in the police service. By the way, this lack of trust and confidence isn't just in the police service, it's in other institutions as well. It's in the health service, it's in probation, it's in the CPS, it's in courts, it's in education. And that's why it's really important in all these areas we improve trust and confidence. I think one of the reasons why you saw fewer Black Londoners and fewer Black people across our country taking up the vaccine is because historically they don't trust government and positions of power and influence, and by the way, drug companies as well. And that's why we've got to understand the way to improve that is to rebuild trust and confidence, not to have a head in the sand.
Of course, definitely. Well, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. I'm very much. Have a lovely evening.